So that's why in this book, Fix the Past or Invent the Future, I advocate people to say, let's forget about the past paradigm. Let's rethink what education can be. There's no purpose in life. You have to instill purpose in your own life.
What if you turn hardship into grace, anger into serenity? Everything changes. Make your life a masterpiece. Welcome, I'm Yannick, your host, and now joining me back again, Yong Zhao. Yong Zhao is the Foundation Distinguished Professor in the School of Education and Social Sciences at the University of Kansas in the United States of America. Here really to talk about his newly published book by ASCD just recently really called Fix the Past or Invent the Future, moving beyond one-size-fits-all education. Yong Zhao, what a pleasure to have you back. What a honor, really. And really updates a little bit what you have been doing the past few weeks. You have been traveling extensively.
Well, thank you. It's always great to be talking to you. And I just come back from really 3 weeks in China. Did a lot of work there. And I was actually thinking about last year, I was from visited more than 10 countries, spent a lot of time in probably around 20 schools, spoken to thousands of educators around the world, from Australia to Belgium to from Greek to Greece, from Turkey to Greece to China, just a lot of places. And to really talk about education in the new era, in the era of AI, what should educators do? What should happen? And where is education going with AI? I think that's really the main idea I have got. And people are anxious, people are nervous, people are hopeful, people are desperate. So it's filled with all kinds of extreme feelings and emotions around this.
This is brilliant. And I really, before we dive into the book, I'm a little bit curious about you going to China because you are very outspoken in terms of education, but also in terms of other things, right? But of course, you are a US citizen, and so you're to some extent, you're protected. But haven't you occasionally be a little bit afraid that you might be, all of a sudden arrested for whatever reasons?
Not really. I've never been truly afraid of that because I think, first of all, I'm not really even afraid of being arrested because you have opinions, but there's also no particular reason to arrest me because I talk about education, I talk about parenting, I talk about children, I talk about the future, and every society has to worry about its future, about its children. So in that sense, I think I am at least, trying to do good for every society. And my views of education might differ from some perspectives. However, the point I start from is that we need to help all our children to thrive in the new era. And everybody feels society is going through dramatic changes. A lot of jobs will disappear, and they have to know what we can do about the future.
That's brilliant. So now let's start and really dive into your newly published book, Time and Again. And that's why I appreciate you so much. And also, that's why you are probably the foremost philosopher in education now in the world. because your writing is so clear and also so pertinent. So your point that you're making is really lived, because you also were an entrepreneur. You also were basically the one who built the very first really English second language English software, actually, when you were still in China. So you really know the stuff that you're talking about, and therefore it's always super uplifting to read your stuff. For example, also Reach for Greatness. That's a book that I go time and again back, because it really helps me to become a better teacher. Really, the strength based education that you are proposing is really extremely powerful. So let's start and really dive into the book. Fix the past or invent the future. Fix the past. Why or why not shall we fix the past?
Every time I talk with you, Yannick, I have a strong sense that you kind of carved your own personalized way of learning. You become you. You and I are both immigrants. Not many immigrants have the great confidence in their language skills to do podcast. This is amazing. So you are yourself amazing and unique, and so I've been thinking a lot about education reforms around every country in the world is about fixing the past, about problems of the past. We have, for example, reading problems, math problems, and at the same time, we are driven by the future, but the future seems to be just trying to fix the past and then we can reach the future. I think I've had that thought for a long time, but the past may not be fixable. Like when we had a lot of horse-driven carts, no matter how much you fix that, you won't get as fast as automobiles. But no matter what kind of automobiles you have today, you cannot drive it to the moon. You can just fix, fix, fix. I think in education, we seldom talk about a paradigm shift. When we try to fix, we fix the standards, we fix the classrooms, we argue about student teacher ratios, we fix testing, we fix pedagogy. We've been fixing for a long time. You look at the schools, we criticize schools for not adopting changes, but schools actually do adopt change and very fast. You look at recent years, social and emotional learning, visible learning, growth mindset, these are all adopted and embraced by schools, but they really haven't changed much. Now, in the age of AI, people are still talking about what skills, what knowledge, what competences would we need to make sure children can do well in the age of AI. I don't think those are the right approaches because none of the fixed and past have worked. So the problem with the past is that it does not, I said that three times, recognize individuals, recognize children as individual human beings who have agency, who have desires, who have purpose. So that's why I think the past cannot be fixed as it is. Education or schools have to adopt a new paradigm to rethink what our problems really are. And the problem actually is very simple. We treat all students the same. We want the same from them, and we impose the same curriculum on all children.
And this is why it doesn't work. And you really elaborate this in the book. Who is each child beyond averages and probabilities? You made a brilliant point, and that's really at the core of your book.
Indeed, I think if you look at the past educational research or even current educational research, we are doing statistical probability bets. We're betting students you'll be One of the 70%, 90%, you would do this. But none of those probabilities capture the essence of individuals. So that's why I argue in education, teachers and students probably are the best who can understand their learning. But we use statistical probability to cover everything. I mean, it's very simple. Like you say, well, red cars are more likely to be caught by cops on the highway, but not my red car. Do you see what I mean? So you say maybe it's true. Probability exists, but for practical education in the classroom, what you need is individuals. So I would say teachers and students, they carve out their own way. That's why you mentioned the book, The Personalizable Education, Reach for Greatness. I think every individual students need their personalized way of learning. They need their personalized way of reaching their own greatness.
And go a little bit into your past, because this is also very important to me, and which was a huge inspiration actually yourself, and how you actually made it an incredible story, really, called, I have it here, Improbable Probabilities, really about your incredible life. Because there you also talk about stories where you really were studying, like I think it was the newspapers, and there already to some extent you had this personalized learning, this ability that you somehow carved your way around in order to really reach greatness. So what do you think was it specifically that made you cultivate this curiosity, that led you to the great person and scholar that you are today?
Well, I think there are many things, but one of this is a lack of authoritarian expectations, but great support. I mean, and when I was growing up, my parents, as I said, illiterate, and my school was not. During the Cultural Revolution, was really formalized to be the elite schools. It's countryside, rural schools. So there was no really what I call authoritarian high expectations. Like in the U.S. right now, we always talk about high expectations. But the high expectation is very authoritarian. You expect children to do well, to do great, but in the prescription of governments, of adults, not following the children. But I did not have that, but I had full support. Means you trust your children. I was giving a talk in Beijing recently to, I was really asking parents. There's parents who pay a lot of money to send their kids to elite private schools. I said, most important is that do you really trust your children? Do you believe in their beliefs? Or are you constantly trying to adjust their thing? I think in America it's the same way. We have governments always set high expectations, but the high expectations very authoritarian. And then the second thing is once you don't have that, children are able to exercise their curiosity without feeling ashamed of not doing what parents or schools want. We give students a strong sense of shame if they pursue their own curiosity without doing school work. I mean, as a teacher, you probably know that, children may be interested in something, but we tell them, yeah, 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 but really, this is what you should do. So you drive them. So, but I had no sense of fear or guilt in exploring the curiosity I had. And then the third one is, you know, don't prejudge the value of opportunities. As adults, we always judge children. Oh, you got into this, for example. How do I know? It's no good, because we in education we try to bet the future on the past. You say, well, in my time, it wasn't like this. So we judge, and then therefore we don't allow children to explore those possibilities. I think in this age, especially in the age of AI, we need to have a lot more different kind of education. So that's why in this book, Fix the Past or Invent the Future, I advocate people to say, let's forget about the past paradigm. Let's rethink what education can be. I just want to hope people can reimagine what's possible.
And especially also, you also say that you can really be a driver of change also in the classroom. So explain what you mean by that, because oftentimes we always look outside of our classroom and blame it to the curriculum, to the policymakers or politics or whatever. But actually, what you lay out here in this very timely book is a very different story, is that it is actually possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it, human history or education history, you've seen a lot of stories of individual teachers, students, and school leaders make big changes. They may not be spread, but you can make changes. I think in education reforms, we have always tried to rely on large scale statistical data. We call that evidence. Then we always expect the system to make big changes, to mandate the changes. But again, whenever mandates come down, people don't like it. So this is a very strange thing. Well, we say systems don't make changes, but when the system makes change, we don't like it. We reject that. So I think educational changes has to be individual, and every individual teacher, if she or he desires, can make changes, no matter how big the policy, how strong the policy is, how strong the curriculum is or assessment is. Individuals could. There was actually, I think, there's a story about World War I or World War II, is that if you lift your gun point above the head of the enemy just for by 1 inch, you have saved a life. Again, you are fighting. You are two armies fighting each other. But if you want to save life, you really don't have to shoot. I think the people always think, oh, I have no choice. I mean, you look at in the atrocities, conducted by the Nazis. There are people, Germans, saved lives of Jews. I mean, people could do something. So do not underestimate the individual power of us. Instead of trying to rely on, oh, they have to change. So I really have very little hope for large systemic changes that benefit all students. I'm really just looking at individuals. Of course, if governments relax requirements of testing, it will be better. If government relaxes, but it may or may not be better for all teachers. Some teachers will say, oh, I would love this testing. I love the curriculum. I love the textbooks. But really, what I want to highlight is in this age, changes are made by individuals. There are a lot of constraints. I mean, look at right now, who is developing AI? Why suddenly have so many wealthy people developing AI, different companies? I mean, you look at the electric car kind of revolution, the new energy, right? How did by the way, I'm not a big fan of Elon Musk. However, he did start revolutionary thinking, right? You think about but everyone could become like Elon Musk. You may not pursue what he wants, but the spirit, you could make the changes.
That's a very good point, and I think you don't have necessarily be a fan of someone, but we can always look at the good things as well that people actually do, and I think he is a great example. I mean, what he has invented and just the spirit, right? The
Yeah.
invention spirit is just incredible. So we are in this sense we are truly blessed. And it really also goes down what you're mentioning is that when people are told something to do, there's always resistance, right? The
Yeah.
self-determination is very clear in this sense as well. And therefore it's so important that we actually do something that really serves our very human uniqueness, right? So
Yeah.
how can AI and technology really help this process?
Well, I mean, I think, you mentioned resistance. Any change, any change, even change that doesn't make a difference will have resistance because you're touching other people's lives. In school, it's the same. No matter what you do, your action will have impact on other people. So you will have change, resistance. In my life, I've always encouraged people not to fight the resistance, just ignore it. Ignore it. If the resistance is too strong, go do something else. If it's not strong, but not try to convince people, you should do your thing. I'm really again just a simple example. It's you yourself doing the podcast. I mean, if you ask, nobody requires you to do it. I mean, when you do it, I bet, even you are doing good thing, there are people who talk about you. Will say, "Why are you doing this crazy thing, Yannick?" Just have nothing to do with them. You would have resistance. It's just what do you do? Just ignore it, and you don't have time. You don't want to waste your time, your energy to convince people to go with you. So I've taken this idea: no matter what you do, if you do something, it's quite amazing. You if you just keep doing it, I think the idea of taking action, do something, ignore resistance, and enjoy your own reward in your own way. I was talking to some people in their 70s. I said, what's the purpose of writing? Schools don't change. I said, well, first of all, you have to enjoy your writing. You may or may not benefit. But if one person read your paper, read your article, read your book, that's that's good. That's good enough because without that, your book, that one person may not be inspired. So I think we need to really start from very small. Instead of trying to dream big, I'm gonna change the world. I'm gonna change it. So like people always ask me, if I gave you $1 million, what would you do? If you were a minister of education, what would you do? Secretary of education. I said, no, no, no. Those are really fantasies. I don't want to force people to change. I want to inspire them. If you can inspire one person, it's good. Two is better.
This is so important, and I think it's really a message that everyone really helps to live a better and more genuine life, especially in education. What keeps you doing what you're doing? Because you're just mentioning, right? You are the best example of really doing you really doing what you truly love. What keeps you going and what gives you the most joy? Because I'm also curious about the responses that you got from parents, for example, when you talk to them, right? I mean, you mentioning you were talking to Chinese parents who talk a lot, who spend a lot of money, right? So what's their response?
Well, honestly, whenever I talk to whether wealthy parents, ordinary parents in China, Australia, in Greece, in Turkey, they're the same. They all think what you said is absolutely right. They want specific advice. But as you know, the issue is this: people believe what you and I believe, but at the same time, they're in their isolated context. They would have to do what they think they must do. But again, you remember, the conversation, presentation makes an hour, 45 minutes. They only get the basic idea of it, but not, I've written over 40 books, 200 some articles. Is if they dive into deeper, it would be wonderful. Like yesterday, I had a Zoom meeting with a person who is from France, now lives in California. She watched my YouTube video. She loved it. She didn't even have a college degree, but she started thinking building education programs based on my age. She's in her 60s. I mean, it's amazing, right? She's an immigrant from France, but I feel happy, because in that sense that again, the idea that you feel like you're pointing out a new possibility, and there are people who wants to know those possibilities, and there are people who are thinking about the possibilities like you, is good, you know. But really, what drives me is mostly my thinking about what's right. There are so many versions now in everybody's thinking what's right, what's true, what's beautiful. I think we all pursue that as a human basic instinct. And if what you think matters to some people, you want to do it.
I think what you really pointing to is really the good life. And when I read your work and really think about it, time and again, this is really an outline of really living the good life. And it doesn't matter whether you have some fancy degrees or you actually don't have any degrees, but you can actually start wherever you are at, wherever level you are at, and really bring your very uniqueness, your very contribution that you're able to contribute to the world, in one way or another, really to the fore. So that's beautiful. Yeah, I know we are almost done, Professor. So it's always a true blessing to have you on. Just the very last thing I want to know, you give us the very first, the most important step to really to become your driver of change.
Well, I think, as I said, I turned 60 last year, and I feel been fortunate all my life is I have found a way to be happy. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, with being happy. If you think about human life, as a biological life, there's no purpose. You just live. That's biological, like any other animal or plants. So human beings, when they pursue meaning in life, it's probably a futile pursuit. It's not a pursuit, it's you create meaning for your own life. You create meaning for your own life. I think that's the most important thing. Meaning is created by you. You follow that. As long as you are creating meaning, you will never run out of meaning in life. So I think people say, "Oh, I want to know what's the purpose of life." There's no purpose in life. You have to instill purpose in your own life. People like some people go to religion, some people go to different meditation. Whatever you do, you're creating meaning. So I think for your audience, for everybody, let's create meaning. It's probably a much better than let's pursue meaning. You create meaning with whatever you have.
Brilliant. What an advice. Really create meaning and you run never out of meaning, and then you really have the very best life. So this is true wisdom of really one of, if not the greatest philosopher of education that is alive currently. It's always a true blessing, Professor Yong Zhao, to have you on the show and really to digest and rethink time and again your incredible work. Thank you so much for being truly a blessing to myself and really to the world.
Thank you, Yannick. Have a great, great new year. We'll talk again, I'm sure, sometime. Okay?
Yong Zhao. That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.the-ykm.com.